Yeah, welcome everybody. So this is going to be very casual. I'm going to start with Matt Talbot, partner, CCO, Work in Progress. And you're in Boulder, is that right,
Yeah.
Matt?
Yep, Boulder.
That's great. I saw like this really quickly. I do a little bit of deep dive into your personal, like, TikTok and all that kind of stuff. But I did see Business Insider 30 under 30, Ad Age 40 under 40, and Ad Week Creative 100. I was like, oh my God, is there any other titles that this guy can have? But what was really exciting to me, it was to find out about the culture of the company, which was, very interesting in that I think, you said in an interview that, people talk about the culture, but they don't go into specifics. So people really don't know what that means. And you did like this, manifesto on it. So I want to applaud you, and I want to work for you guys. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
No, it's amazing because I think you allow pets in the office, and you have a dog bone library. What the hell is a dog bone library?
Yeah, one of our ACD art directors saw a TikTok about someone doing a DIY dog bone library, and because we have so many dogs here, they built one where you can like leave a bone, take a bone. And it was just a fun project to have. So it's right outside. It's right outside my office, right here, to the right. And so yeah, it's been fun to have all the different, animals since we've been back.
I love that. I love that. You also have a no asshole policy. I love that. That's just like that to me is just like genius because we've all known them.
Yeah.
No
Yes,
amount of talent. You say that no amount of talent can make being an asshole acceptable, and I so agree with that, particularly where we are now, just in general. So I applaud you, and you also I think you do this thing like every Monday morning. You still ask people to in 5 words tell about their weekend.
Yeah, we do. It started we did a couple things in COVID. We would do like Friday kind of small group happy hours. Like we once did it with a big group and no one would share, but we realized if we broke it down into groups of like 5 or 6 people would share. But the other thing we did is, your weekend in 5 words. You can elaborate after that in Slack if you want. But because we're only in a couple days a week, we do Tuesday, Thursdays. It's a way to like kick off a conversation, connect on your hobbies and things on Mondays and get a snapshot of what people were up to and get to know people. And so we've continued to do it, even though we're back in person a couple days a week.
That's brilliant. Well, I'm not going to say too much more, but I do think I read something about you were asked like, what is the worst thing that people say about you? And I think it's like you're too serious, or that you're always serious, or that you don't seem serious to me. You seem fun. So.
I have an intense thinking face. I think that's and I've tried to learn, have a little bit more emotional intelligence of how that comes across to people that don't know me as well. So, but yeah, I like to think I keep it pretty light and have a good sense of humor, but I think sometimes and my ears turn red is the other thing sometimes, but which you probably won't pick up on camera here, but that's my other giveaway. But yeah,
maybe
I think
maybe you have resting thinking face instead of resting bitch face.
Right,
I think
exactly.
so. I think I do. Yeah, I'm sure it'll show up at some point during this and kind of take in some information. So we'll see if it reveals itself.
That's brilliant. Well, welcome. The next one, I'm going to introduce everybody to Gayle. Gayle, Seminara-Mandel. She's the Executive Director, New York Festival's AME Awards for Advertising and Marketing Effectiveness. And she's also the VP of Communications internationally for AME Awards. So welcome, Gayle. I hope I got all that right.
Yeah, happy to be here. Usually I'm not on these panels. Usually I'm like, please, will you be on our panel? So this is a flip side for me, but thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I think we talked about LBB and Great Guns talked about like how can we change things up. We've kind of gone through a lot of leaders and really amazing people, and I kind of want to start mixing it up and having award shows leaders, music people who are A-level editors and leaders in the industry, and really kind of cross-pollinate so that everybody kind of gets to know each other a little bit more and really utilize.
Great idea.
Yeah, and utilize this format that this platform is crazy that we're still using it. It's quite amazing. I normally can find anything about anybody. You were very like, you were hard.
I'm in the witness protection program, so.
No joke. You and Ed both. I even like begged Ed and you to like accept my my invite to Instagram, because I usually can like go through photos and see a lot of stuff. But I think that this was an interesting thing that I heard a quote. It was one of your grand jury members, which I want you to talk about that a little bit about the awards and what you guys do. But I can't remember who said it, but they said effectiveness has always been the ultimate purpose of advertising, work that works. And it was kind of, I mean, maybe from, production, we don't hear that kind of speak. Is that something that is normal, or is that a phrase that people use?
Well, it's normal for AME and for the FEs. People are looking for what moves the needle for the brand. So yeah, when I took over AME a few years, like 3-4 years back, I was like, oh wow, now it has to be great and effective. It can't just be like beautiful and entertaining and showcase the product. And so for me, it was an exciting learning curve, and working with all these strategists and chief marketing officers who I recruited for the jury. It was definitely a learning experience. And yeah, it is really important. And I know that it's getting more and more important on the brand side. They want results. But, we all want to see that commercial where we're like, oh, it's gorgeous. But then like, did it sell the Skittles, or what did it do? And sometimes I love spots, and then I'm like, what was that about? Was it about a cloud or what? Like, sometimes they just capture your they entertain you. And anyway, so that's what it's about. It's really, did it work for the brand? Did it do its job? Did it accomplish what it was supposed to?
I love that. I think it's great. I mean, again, this is so exciting to like get a different perspective, in the industry now, so that our viewers can like kind of like learn and expand a little bit. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say? I mean, being on a panel, is this your first panel by any chance?
The first panel that I've been on, not that I've set up. Yeah, definitely it is. I guess I would say, hey, I'm looking for chief strategy officers for the AME Awards jury. So
that's
email
good.
me. If you have anybody on your team, let me know. I'd love to recruit them and have them judge this year's work.
There you go.
Pretty nice as first panel hosts as well, I would say. Oliver definitely is. He's a good first host to quiz you, I think.
Yeah.
That's great.
He's a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, oh, why did I say yes?
It's funny because we haven't done this since I think November was our last one, and we just took a hiatus. I was a little nervous today. I was like, oh my God, I don't really know these guys. I know your agents, I know the festivals, and I was like, shit, can I do this? I don't know. So I'm just gonna keep winging it. But thank you, Gayle, and welcome. And now Ed Rogers. You're the managing partner of Alto, New York, and you're in Brooklyn, I assume, right?
I have recently moved. Summer last year, we moved out to Long Island. Yeah, so we are pretty fiercely remote at Alto, because we believe that great talent's sort of anywhere, and we want to meet them there. And then we got a weekend place, and we spent the summer out here, and then we just sort of realized, why would we go back and live in Brooklyn? when our kids loved running around out here, and there's good schools and stuff out here. So we recently moved, but I spent a dozen years in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think it's amazing that we've still, been able to adapt and adopt to the new kind of work balance life, if that's what you want to call it, because I do think it works. Obviously, this year I'm on a couple of juries, and there's some really amazing work. So it didn't hurt work, and people are still buying products. So you guys are effective, and that's great. I truly, you're the first person. I've never been able to find anything that I would call like subversive or kind of crazy or through your past. So you have to tell us.
That's great. That's great success in my opinion. I try to be relatively under the radar, and I'm not huge on the social media side of things. So originally from New Zealand, I started my advertising career in New Zealand, and then I spent about 3.5 years in Sydney, Australia, really getting the bug for advertising and getting deeper into the world of advertising before then realizing that seeing the attraction and heading north to Madison Avenue, where I spent 7 or 8 years at Chiat Day before then going to Droga and being dropped straight into like a massive Super Bowl campaign, baptism by fire, and then
love that.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about me, but love it here in the States, and was planning to come originally for 2 years, and sort of 13 years later, and pets and kids and Long Island life later, here we are.
Well, good for you. Well, you know, and the agency's doing very well. So bravo. Well, welcome. Again, really happy to have you guys. I'm going to jump right in. We're going to go to our first question. You know, I think we all have been asked this. When I was a kid, I was asked this, is like, if you could invite anybody to dinner or a dinner party, or like, who would it be? And, you know, when I was growing up, it was like, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and like, you know, people of the culture of the time. But so the question is that you're having a dinner party and you can bring back to life. So I think it could be anybody, like, you know, future, present, past, it doesn't matter. So there's 4 people at the dinner. Who would they be and why would you invite them? And I think we're going to start with Matt first, because that face is like
thinking.
Thinking.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think of all the different combinations and what would be the most fun, but also the most interesting. But what I ended up, when I think about just one dinner, past and present, my list was Abraham Lincoln, Virgil Abloh,
Wow.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Robin Williams.
Wow.
So
okay.
I think you got like the past, and then someone that would appreciate the progress of the present, right? Like with Abraham Lincoln and Virgil Abloh. And then I think Robin Williams, even though we all know now how much of a kind of a tortured individual he was, how much, you know, happiness and joy and like levity he could bring to a room. And then I think Ruth, you know, just was such an incredible person all the way through, but spans a long period of that time, but also seemed to not take herself too seriously from everything we could see, which was pretty amazing. Obviously, she became like more of an icon later in life, but to be able to have those 4 together, I probably wouldn't be saying much, needless to say. I'd just be there. I don't know if I'd feel like too comfortable to add anything. But just getting to get that group together, that seemed pretty amazing night.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty amazing. Imagine the conversation, because, you know, you always see like Ruth, you know, Ginsburg, she's very, you know, she's held and responsible and confident. And I'm sure she tells jokes and laughs and giggles just like everybody else. So I'm sure like her and Robin Williams would be crazy. I think that's I'd love to be at that dinner party. It'd be very hard to do a menu around those 4 people though.
Yeah, check for allergies and any dietary requirements.
Exactly. I think goes Chick-fil-A the whole time, the whole way, you know. What about you, Ed? Let's go with you.
Again, I'd try to pull together like people that had a really interesting story to tell, or maybe slightly misunderstood. So for me, it would be Ernest Shackleton, who has just had the wildest journey, and like ironically did it on a ship called the Endurance. And I just think like such an insane journey, and there just must be so many amazing chapters within that story to share. Completely different, Lady Di.
Wow. Yeah.
Like I caught up on The Crown over the break, and just the goss, like what's actually true, what's actually true.
Exactly.
And then my great grandfather, all the gentlemen in my family have this really weird middle name, which is Brockway. And we have it, the rumor is we have it because it was my great grandfather's mistress's surname. So we need to understand a little bit more about this story. And admittedly, it was a very different time, but still, I want to know why we all had this name. So
Yeah,
I'd love to include him for sure. And then appreciate food and wine. And I don't think you can appreciate those two things without wanting to have a meal with Anthony Bourdain. So that would be that sort of round out the crew.
Good one.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a big that's a dinner. I mean, it's funny because you look at Lady Di, and she, you know, for all intents and purposes, she's so young, but she was so old. She had done so much in her time. Like she could probably hold her own with any of those people, and every from knowing ships and boats, from growing up on that, like, you know, with the Royals, and just that's an amazing. Well, let's just talk about two things. One, mistress. Okay, that's interesting that your family has that and they talk about it. But I guess you know, welcome to 21st century. And then dinner with Anthony Bourdain. Like, how do you make a menu?
Yeah.
Like, crazy, right?
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be cooking, just to be clear. Hosting, but not cooking.
I love it. Well, that's interesting. I think it's really great. It's funny, you know. I think people think like that's such a stupid question, but the truth is like when you really kind of break it down and you hear from leaders who talk about, you know, people that are interesting to them, it really does kind of provoke an interest in what you guys and how you guys think. So I thank you for those both of you guys. Now, what about you, Gayle?
You know, I think there's a theme in like the folks that I wanted to ask questions. One was Martin Luther King. I wanted to know, how did he feel right before he gave his I have a dream speech? You know, like, was he scared? Did he see the future? And what would he think about what's going on now? You know, George Floyd and DE&I, would he think we've come far enough? So that was one. And then I flipped to Jackie Kennedy. You know, it took me back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, what was she going through? You know, the whole world is, are we going to die? Are we going to get blown up? But yet she's the style icon and speaks all these languages, sort of shows up her husband in France with, you know, he said something about, you know, I'm the man who accompanied Jackie Kennedy to France. So I really wanted to hear from her. And then Coco Chanel, just because like, wow, like what a life, you know, 2 world wars and made clothes and then reinvented herself, reinvented women. And then I'm a Buddhist and I thought, you know, I'd like to talk to Buddha, how did he make that transition from this material world? Like, so a lot of it for me was like faith over fear, you know, like how do you jump to that next level? All those people seem like they really jumped, like Jackie redecorating the White House, like really historically redecorating it. But that was a tough question. I was like, I don't know, you know, like, and then, oh, they're still alive. I can't have them. So yeah, so I'd like to go to all your dinner parties. These all sound
I think it would be great to have one big dinner party with all 3 of you hosting. That could be pretty spectacular, right there.
Fun.
That's a night, you know. Well, thank you guys for that. I appreciate it. I'm going to go to the second question, which is, what is the most difficult decision that you've made in the last 2 years, and how did you come to that decision? Let's go with with Matt.
Oh man, yeah. I was trying to think back of, it always seems so difficult in the moment, right? And then time passes, but one that stood out to me, and it brings back in work because it just kind of inevitably intertwines. Just, and I think we probably can all relate to that to varying degrees, but just being one of the partners at WIP, you know, and it's a little family that trying to take care of, and business and life is so intertwined, you know, trying to run a small business during COVID. But you know, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, you know, we grew a lot during COVID, which was kind of weird because we won Domino's at the end of 2020. So we went from 23 people to 50, all while remote. And then, you know, we always had in our mind's eye to be together. Like we like that there's so many different models of agencies. We just wanted to have people move to Boulder and be a reason to come to Boulder. And we want to stay pretty small forever, you know, under 100 people. So we always wanted that to be kind of part of the agency, but we didn't have a space that could fit us all. because we grew so much during COVID, and that lease ended, and we had to decide what to do. And you're trying to get a space, not knowing how the world's going to turn out or when we're going to be able to get back together. And, it's it's one of the bigger expenditures as a small business of like a potential 5-year lease and where it is. And is it a place people want to be at? How many days would we even be there? Because we didn't know what our plan was going to be yet, but we did want it to be a hub. So kind of making that leap and making that decision in such an uncertain time, because we ended up doing some construction to build some offices and making some investments to it. And that was just a weird, big decision to make during an uncertain time. And ultimately ended up working out in the sense that it's a place people want to be in. It was the right space, and we went bigger than we thought we needed, but we knew people would want to have space, like not be on top of each other, right? And that you would need a ton of phone rooms because you're going to be on Zooms with clients all the time, which is a great benefit, but you need, even though you're together, you need individual spaces and things. So that was a big difficult decision to make in the last couple of years. And I feel fortunate that was a big difficult decision for us, because I think people are going through a lot harder stuff, but that was something that really stuck with me looking back.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big decision. So at what point during the pandemic did you actually make that decision? Was it like last year, 2 years ago? And how long did the process take to, make the decision and then put down the deposit for the building and then build it out?
Yeah. So we started touring spaces in early 2021. I think we signed our lease in June-ish of 2021. We did a few months of construction, and then we as partners started coming in right after Labor Day of 2021, but we didn't have anybody start coming back in until summer of 2022. Anybody required to come in, because we always had said, we tried to communicate really early. A lot of people have kids and things to plan with daycare and school. And so at some point, we kind of kept postponing it. And then we said in December of 2021, no one's going to have to come back in any way, shape, or form until the summer. So that way, you can get through the school year and have everything. So then we started having people come in then. And so we've been, basically back a couple days a week since summer of 22. So a little over 6 months.
Wow. And just looking back, is there anything that you want anybody to know, or, these people, that are, have these massive buildings and these great overheads and, people are just not, willing to kind of come back full time. Is there any, like, I don't know, any learnings or any advice or any wisdom from that you kind of got?
Yeah. I think the key for us was consistency and messaging. Like even when we doubled during COVID, we told everybody that we would eventually be in person. So no one felt like a bait or switch. And we did relo and we moved people out to Boulder. Like we didn't have people start and then try to pull the rug out from under them or misrepresent what we were going to be. And so everybody felt very in the loop and knew what they were signing up for. And that for us, it just is a way to determine who's right or not, because we don't need everybody. We just need the right people. And so if that interests you, if that, and it's not for everybody, which is great. And it's, that people knew like, oh no, I want that. Like, I want to be somewhere where that's part of the culture is a couple days a week, or I have a community from that. And so we weren't trying to trick anybody, or, we were just hyper communicative the entire time of, even if people started with us in December of 2020 and weren't then in an office until June of 2022,
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
But that there's like a checkbox when you go to apply, like, does this interest you? So we just made it super clear. And I think that's super important, because I think we've seen a lot of big companies do it wrong and not make it clear and say you're remote, but then are passive aggressive against you if you are remote and don't actually embrace it, or then call you back. And so, I think that's whatever model you're going to be, because there's so many wonderful ones that create great agencies, like just be clear and consistent about what that is.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. What about you, Ed?
I think the difficult, thankfully haven't had too many, to be perfectly honest. But the difficult ones have been based around or centered around saying no to things, right? Like, and I'm getting a bit of a sense of that saying no is a harder thing than saying yes a lot of the time. So I think I said at the top, like I said no to moving back to the city after summer, and it was a difficult decision because after like such a lengthy amount of time, like I do feel like part of my identity was like New York City based, you know, and so realizing that didn't need to be such an important part of my identity, and that there is so much more to my identity beyond that. I think more on the work side of things is saying no to opportunities, especially being like a smaller sized agency and a real indie shop. What you say no to really defines you, because you have limited bandwidth to really focus on the right things. And if you say yes to everything, and you take just one bad project or one bad client, I think it can really shape you. So yeah, saying no has definitely been probably the hard thing the last couple of years.
That's amazing. I do think, you know, one of the words, the questions early on was what is the one word during the pandemic that you hate or is negative, or what's positive? But somebody said early on that no was a positive word, and I think it is. You know, it's like it's important to know who you are and what you're capable of, so that then you can build a foundation and build from there. So I think that's great. That's brilliant. I think that's amazing. And you know, I also think that we should, you know, point out that again, we're a Zoom away, we're a phone call away, we're a click away, you're a train ride away, you're not, it's not like you're never going to see people. And you know, in production, from where I sit, I think people want to get out and have lunches and dinners and see each other again. So we're going to come to a community near you, so don't worry, we'll come to you. You know, and people can come to you, your employees, your staff, you know, that's always a good thing too. Tell me something, like, is that something that you kind of?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So like you always get the question, like, how do you build culture, right?
Yeah.
We try to catch up, we try to get the team together. Our ambition is like 3 solid times a year. I think last year, because of monkeypox, or the scare of monkeypox, and then a tail end spike of COVID, we did it once, but we did it well. So we took the team to New Orleans for 2
my hometown.
days. Yeah, for 2 days. So, and that was amazing. And it's like the number of the crew that came up and just said, look, we don't spend every day together in an office, but the fact that we can get together, and we have, you know, we do it in such an interesting location that is, you know, foreign for all but one, you know, was really meaningful and really special. So I look, there are as Matt said, there are so many different ways to do it, and I think we're all just figuring out what fits right for the particular DNA of each business, and what keeps that team like gelling together and bonded and building.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think well said, because I do think communication is key to all of that. It's just consistency and communicating, and the ability to be able to, like, you know, call you up or Zoom you up, or, you know, text you or DM you or whatever, for younger people who don't, or not experienced, or who don't have they're afraid to, like, you know, hit you up. For them to hear that, you know, you're welcoming that, I think is really amazing. And good for you. I think that's terrific. And again, New Orleans is my hometown. I love it. I think it's really amazing. So I'm glad you had a good time there. Gayle, what about you? What is like the most difficult decision that you've made in the last year, 2 years?
Yeah, I think for me, it was sort of like an adjustment of my headspace. I had to look at my life and say, you can't plan everything. You just have to be in the moment, be mindful. I'm older, and so my parents are very old, and my mom passed away 1.5 years ago with like a very sudden brain tumor. And like, I'm one of those people, I'm always like, we're here now, but I'm thinking about what I have to do later and tomorrow. And I really had to get a mindfulness practice and live in that moment, because everything was changing so rapidly. And then I realized like my whole life really needed that. You know, it wasn't just my relationship with my mom, I was like, be here now, you know, be present, be present. So for me, it was just accepting. And, you know, I think you live your life a certain way. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that's not the way to live it. So it was a big adjustment for me to just be present, be accepting. And so it's not like it was a hard thing, but for me, it was like a personal thing. So people really didn't witness it or
Right.
see it. It was just, you know, something, a change, an active change I was working on.
Well, I mean, look, I think it is very difficult to make changes, no matter what maybe like when you're really a kid and you're young and you're vulnerable still and you're open. But it's hard for anybody to make a change. I was saying this to a friend the other day. I just was like, oh my God, like I came to Florida, don't judge. But I came to Florida pre-pandemic. I'm from New Orleans. I've always been in Florida. And I leased a house. I ended up buying this house. And then I came to the East Coast of Florida. A friend invited me to her house. And I ended up, I said, if you ever sell this house, I'll buy it. And she called me 6 months later and said, I want to sell it. So I bought this house that I'm in right now. It took me like a year and a half to like renovate it during the pandemic, which is crazy. But the point of the story is that like I told this friend, like, I've never been happier. Like, and I lived in California for 35 years. I love it. It's amazing. But I've never been happier. And then the next day we were having lunch. I was like, you know what? It's like, God, like, maybe I should buy another house back in California. And like, he was like, dude, yesterday you said you've never been happier. Like, when are you going to just like stay in the freaking moment? And that is a hard one for everybody, is just to like enjoy what you have today, because we learned in the pandemic, it can go away really fast. And it happened to a lot of people. And I just work on that every day. So Gayle, that's not a, that, and people are going to, the audience is going to hear this and they're going to identify with that. There's a lot of people who struggle with like, lost and dealing with staying in the moment. And I think it's really important for people to hear that. So thank you all.
Well, that pandemic, the whole pandemic thing, I don't know how anybody else felt, but like it was supposed to be 2 weeks and then we were going to go back to work. And then it's like snowballing and we're watching that map of where it's creeping across Europe. And, I was rehearsing tragedy in my brain, like, oh my God, what's next? And, and here we are, we're still living with it. And like Matt said, we all grew from it. I mean, it was one of those blessings, I guess, in disguise, like the ones we survived, but we changed and we evolved. So it's been great hearing everybody's thoughts about it.
And I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I think it is important to be able to say that, the pandemic was a terrible, terrible thing, but in a way there was a lot of great, amazing, transformative moments and meaningful relationships, and, technology took us to a different place. I think we should talk about that and celebrate that, and, and not be afraid of it. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, any last words from anybody?
I mean, it was great for QR codes. Let's be honest.
Like for the first like 6 months, I was like,
they're sticking.
how do you get the QR code in my phone? Like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, I'm in Florida. Remember?
I have a teenager, so I
know, right?
It's easy for me.
and in-house IT.
Yeah, in-house IT. Exactly. I love that.
With the eye rolls and the attitude, but still.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm going to let Addison ask the third question.
Okay. Do you have a go-to location that you go to find some time to yourself or just to unwind? Ed, you're a newbie in Long Island by the sounds of it. So have you found somewhere like that? Maybe somewhere at the ocean, possibly?
It's a very predictable answer, and that is the water. So I've got into a almost daily habit of just spending 45 minutes to an hour just taking a walk down to a little very quaint, cute little yacht club, community yacht club, and just like soaking up a bit of the view and the water, and just kind of like resetting my brain or setting my brain for the day ahead in a very calm way. I think part of it for me is having grown up in New Zealand, where you're just constantly surrounded by or on or in the water. I think part of it is I've managed to find the most New Zealand part of New York for me and my family.
Yeah.
Did anybody expect the yacht club part of it? I was like, oh, a nice little like hidden beach.
No, it's a tiny. It's kind of like it's like a shack.
No,
But
I'm
it's
joking.
super
Look,
cute. Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm also just jealous because I'm currently based in Germany, and which is
Oh,
as good as landlocked, really. You know, there's a
Yeah.
bit of coast in the far north, but and from the UK, so also used to being surrounded by the water. Not the most scenic of water sometimes, but still, it has a special.
There's some very
Special-
pretty spots.
There are
I've
some
spent
very pretty
some
spots.
time around there. It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
and
got to
Gayle,
jump
how
over to
about
the
you?
Rhine.
Say that again, Matt.
Oh, I said you have to jump over to the Rhine or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have an abundance of lakes and rivers, but
Yeah,
don't really hit the same way as the ocean, to be honest.
No.
yeah, definitely not.
But yeah, Gayle, how about you?
I used to live in the city, and when I would always go to Lake Michigan, which is ginormous, it looks like an ocean. And then we moved to the suburbs, and I was like, the suburbs. But we live on a 76-acre park.
Wow.
And so there's this pond sort of body of water in there, and these beautiful cranes are roosting in there, and then you'll get geese and ducks and bullfrogs, and there's all these rushes. And because it's the suburbs and everybody drives everywhere, hardly anybody's walking in there. So, I'll be just checking it out, and it's really peaceful. And I never thought that would have been me. I was always I love nature, but with lots of people, because it just seems so nature. But this is just so and so zen. It's just like, oh wow, look, a dewdrop. I'm just like really tuned in, and it's a great way to turn my brain off. So that's my place.
Was moving to the suburbs also a post-pandemic thing, or did that happen before?
No, I always say we adopted a child late in life, and we were like, we got to raise him free range here, because where we lived right in the middle of the city, so much was going on, and it was just a different life. So we moved out here, and for me, I was just like, I will never get my hair cut not in the city. I was like gonna go to the city for everything, and then I was like, wow, you just drive and you park up and you just walk right in. There's not like 3 blocks of walking from the parking spot. And so, yeah, it was a big transition, but it was great for my son who had asthma, and we moved here and it went away.
Okay.
And now he's 20. So
So you've both left the city and obviously have your special places, but do you also have that place in the city as well, I imagine, right? In New York and Chicago.
Yeah. Neighborhoods.
Different neighborhoods. Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely I go in a bit for client meetings, and obviously we still travel. We're starting to travel a bit more with work, but I think I probably appreciate it more now, being able to go and not actually living in close proximity. Like I don't have the annoying part, but then when I go in, the energy hits you a bit more.
Yeah. And Matt, how about you?
Well, I think I did used to be the ocean too, because I grew up in California, and I've been in Boulder about 13 years now, which is crazy. But that, I grew up inland LA, and then I went to school in San Diego, worked in Santa Monica, worked in San Francisco. So it's like all coastal California life.
Mm-hmm.
But in Boulder, I'm now just at the base of the foothills. So like for me, it's kind of a combination of, I do hike some, but I'm not going to claim I'm a big hiker. And it's a drive or a motorcycle ride up into the mountains.
Wow.
And it's just so accessible, and you can go right up to Netherland, which is this, it's getting bigger now, but it's like a 4,000 person mountain town just 30 minutes up, and then you can cut over Peak to Peak Highway, which is like one of the best roads in the country, if not the world, and right to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park and come back down. So there's like an hour and a half loop I can do. And driving, I can be thinking more, like kind of clear my mind and be thinking, and then the motorcycle is kind of the opposite, where I only am thinking about that. And so like I have to focus on that, which is good. My partners would appreciate I only focus on that. But that, it's, and then I can kind of come back down, and I felt like I got away, and really stopped thinking about what can definitely be all consuming in good ways and bad ways of work and life with the company. So as many of you can relate to. So yeah, I feel very lucky that I have that just right right next to where I am.
Good old fashioned drive when you've got that on your doorstep it's quite a nice thing, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
special. It's so beautiful. It's insane. Like it just, the access to just what looks like, you know, the nature that you always see in National Geographic is 5 minutes away. Sometimes there's traffic up to the mountain, but I don't let that frustrate me.
Cool. Thank you very much. Anyway, Oliver, back to you.
Yeah, that was really amazing, because when you think about, you know, prior to March 7th or 8th of 2020, nobody looked up, nobody went outside, nobody walked, nobody talked about, you know, egrets roosting or small little shacky yacht clubs in the, you know, for walk, or, you know, even new boulder head boulders or mountains, you know. And the fact that all of us, you three, have literally like taken advantage of that and make that a part of your everyday life is really a testament to, you know, how leadership really does kind of, you know, survive in we still what is a chaotic, you know, world that we live in, you know. So I appreciate all that. Thank you for those answers. Those are great. The fourth question is that, you know, the pandemic changed a lot about our personal lives for better and for worse, as we just talked about. And how has it changed the way that you operate at home and at work in the, you know, in the long term? So how has it changed work and at home? Gayle, why don't we go with you first?
Yeah, for me, it didn't change a lot for me with work, because when I got this job with New York Festivals, I was remote. I was like the poster child for remote working. And I would, you know, fly into New York for the shows, or fly to Vegas when we did our TV and film show out there. And so I was in New York, and it was great. But then when everybody else became remote, people were like, we're remote. Like they were like, they didn't know how to do it. And I had faxes here and copiers, and I was like, yes, I'm remote. Yes. And then a lot of the younger people at work didn't like the isolation. You know, there's a young woman, she moved from, I don't know, Baltimore area, and she feels very isolated. So we have lots of talks, but we meet on Zooms. And I'm going to take a page out of Matt's book with the 5 words on the weekend, because our poor CEO, we get on the meetings, and some people won't even show their face. You see their name. And she's like, hey, can we have everybody's face? And people are like, just really quiet. And, you know, some of us try to, you know, I'm in PR, so I'm always like trying to keep it going. So that was a really big change. But I will say that out of that whole thing, the company has really become way more creative. And the person who's our president now of the competitions, he started this initiative with all this content, and you know, so it's been a really exciting time. And I want to say, when New York Festivals, you know, 10 years ago had access to the whole world, we were doing screenings overseas and things, but what we're doing now is so out of the box. So I think the big change on both levels was creativity. You know, maybe it's no commute, so you have time to be chill about things and ponder, as opposed to just jump into a subway car or your car and drive someplace. So yeah, big change for my company that I work for, not so much for me. And at home, I would say that the only change was when my son, who was in high school at the time, getting ready to graduate, he was trapped with us, you know, in March. So I was like, let's have dinner. So I was making all this food. And so that was really fun. And, you know, he would kind of be forced to talk, because we'd say, well, how so? Or what's that about? We couldn't get the 1-word answers, like, where are you going? Out with who? Friends? Like, which friends? And have you seen them? So that was great. I felt like our family got closer, and, you know, a little fatter, because my husband and I ate a lot.
Maybe you could use the 5-word answer policy with him as well, Gayle.
That's a good idea.
Well, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Matt also, I think, established a TikTok part of his culture. And maybe that's maybe a better, you should talk to Matt about that, because it's a pretty extreme but amazing way to communicate creatively. But anyway, Ed, what about you?
I think it probably applies equally. My answer applies equally to personal and work, and that is just a like re-engineering around like prioritization around the things that sort of matter, and trying to give not getting caught up in the little things or whatever is like most urgent right now, and just trying to re-engineer around spending the majority of my time on the things that really matter the most, and not getting like pulled into the fray, so to speak. Both at home, so that like, weekends, we don't have to run around like, packing our weekends because we've got a couple of young kids. Let's just try and do a fewer, more meaningful things. And I think that the same most definitely applies to Alto and what we're up to as well.
That's amazing. I do think that, one of the observations that I've had over the past couple of years is that prior to the pandemic, we were, most leaders, make, upwards of 300, 400, 500 decisions every day without even thinking about it. Like, you just kind of go, yes, no, whatever. And I think during the pandemic, it's allowed you to do exactly what you said, just to stop and know that you don't have to be so reactionary. You don't have to make a decision. You can really sit back and go, like, let me just see how this plays out, or let me give it some thought, or and a lot of time, often, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but the issue or the hard decision or the craziness that's happening kind of dissipates in a way. People are smart, and people, know how to deal. And that's why you hire such great people that are surrounding you, I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, it's that old adage, it's very well played, so forgive me, but it's like, does it have to be like, does the decision have to be made? Does it have to be made now? And does it have to be made by me? I think that still rings very true, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the true quality of leaders, is like, hire the best people and get out of their way. It's a good thing. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think my life's changed a couple ways, some because of COVID and some coincidentally. Like, I think I used to fly 60, 70 times a year, and we've had a good little streak lately of some travel again, but like the fact that, we used to do phone calls with clients a lot, right, too. And I just think it was so impersonal. You couldn't see them. You couldn't see like, and now you see into their homes and stuff too, which is like with employees and clients. So that's like a whole nother level of knowing them and knowing their family. But I think the fact that I've been able to be home more and like feel a bit more of like, oh, I can make plans because I won't be gone, or invest in certain relationships, has been a huge change. I make jokes about being able to keep houseplants alive, but it's a lot bigger than that. Because I was in the same place in Boulder for 11 years, the same condo, and then I finally moved last October because I was like, oh, my lifestyle is different now. Like, what I want from home, how much I'm going to be home, how much I'm going to be on the road. So that's been a massive change. And I love traveling. I love going to different places, but just to have to do it all the time and every week is not fun. It's not great. And then I think, just in personal life, like I met my now fiance the June before in 2019. And so we spent, COVID together, like 6 months. We went to Australia and New Zealand on a trip for a friend's wedding. And 6 months after started dating, and then, we didn't know that we got that big trip in before everything locked down. And then we're just together nonstop, and, and just got engaged about a month ago. But, being able to invest in that personal relationship and be around and not just be gone all the time, and to then know we love being around each other and love traveling together. But that's been a big change in my life for the better. That kind of came because of COVID, because I was able to pause. And I know it was hard I was lucky to meet someone before the lockdown, because a lot of people that were single, it became very hard to meet anybody, and it could be very isolating, but that we were able to have that time together, and then just grow so close together. And I'm not at the kid stage yet, but I've watched all 4 of my business partners. They range from having a 1-year-old to having a 15 and 12-year-old. son and having 3 daughters, so I've been able to watch all that, and that will come. But I think that, those are 2 ways that life's changed during COVID and changed because of COVID.
Wow. Well,
Quite a bit.
excuse me. Congratulations. That's amazing. That
Thank
is
you.
there a date set yet?
We're checking venues. We're working back. We picked a spot like city wise, and then we're working back just practically, and just finding out. We don't want to drag it out too long, like anything. We'd rather do it sooner than later. And you can spend the full time planning. You could have 2 years and spend the full time planning.
Yeah.
But just like production and creative, right? You can use sometimes shorter time is good. But we'll see if we can make it happen in the later part of this year. We're trying to shoot for between September and November. So we'll see if that happens.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing. Thank you for
Thank you.
this. The last question, there is a bonus round, but given your seniority, you must have all been interviewed thousands and thousands of times, maybe Gayle, just by people that you bring on your panel, which I think is interesting. What are the key attributes that you look for when interviewing potential new employees? I'll go with Ed.
It's not I don't think it's the most original thing, but it's definitely a trick that I heard about and have tried out and really enjoy using, and that is if you can go to a place of hospitality or take the candidate to a place of hospitality and see how they interact with the staff within the establishment. And I think having enlisted that and seen varying degrees of how people treat others, you can really figure out someone's humanity very, very quickly. So that's definitely something that one of the tricks that I've adopted to a level of success. The other is, and it's more of a strategic thing, because a lot of the roles that I'm hiring for have got a notable element of strategy, and that is getting candidates to talk about themselves in the way that we try to work with our clients. So trying to get a candidate to talk about themselves as if they were a brand, or as if they were a brand themselves, and the reasons why, and what are the attributes of that brand that they sort of see in themselves. And I don't care what the brand that they pick is, but I care about the way in which they sort of see themselves and the attributes that they see. And it's a pretty annoying question. So I caveat at the beginning that it's a bit of a shitty question to be asking, but it's really interesting, some of the responses that you get back, and how methodical candidates are and how they answer it.
Yeah, I love it. Was there any stories? Did any candidates at a restaurant or wherever you brought them, were they mean or rude to people, or is there one story you can share with us that was good?
I've definitely had some that have, I think probably, I don't know if it's nerves, but they've done everything in their power to try and ignore the wait staff. And I'm not convinced that they're genuinely just rude to wait staff, but I think they just don't, the dynamic of being in a restaurant, trying to maintain an interview and the dialogue whilst also trying to navigate when and how and what to order, I think sometimes is a little bit too much for some.
Yeah, plus eating, you ask the question as they put the food in their mouth, and it's let me chew, hold on. That's really a good way. I hope anybody that's a potential client for any potential job, this, just be prepared.
Yeah, I also don't know if this is a uniquely American corporate culture thing, but whenever anyone's eating in the workplace, I find they always try and cover their mouth. Yeah. Whereas no one does that at a restaurant. So it's kind of this is a work thing, but
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's amazing. What about you, Gayle?
With New York festivals, I'm not really hiring people. We're a small team, but in other positions, I've built teams, and before I left advertising adjacent, the first time after that, I did a bookstore, pretty big bookstore, 6,000 square feet, a cafe, a learning center, and I had 35 employees. And what I really looked for with people that had empathy, getting back to what Matt and Ed said, they don't want to work with jerks. People who were really curious about life, assholes, okay. I stand corrected. Don't be an asshole, Oliver. No, just kidding.
Was I just an asshole? I don't mean
that. I'm glad you said that.
I'm just teasing. No, there was this place in Minneapolis that used to have a t-shirt, I don't want to work with any jerks. Do you remember that? It was a production house or something. Anyway, I like people who have integrity, just even about just little tiny things. Empathy, you don't want people being jerky to your coworkers. Creativity, and like this sort of like a lust for life, like a joie de vivre, sort of like appreciation, because I really do think everybody is good given, obviously you don't want to give somebody a break to like, here, operate on my brain, but I think most people, you can train them to do something, give them the opportunity if they've got that interest and they can do it. So I found some really spectacular people, graphic designers that were trying to be the cafe manager because that's the job that was available, and a marketing person who was, really wanting to be the bookstore manager. But so you just talk with people and you see their gifts rise, and then let them run with those gifts, and you're successful.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Imagine if you were in a position to hire now. I would love to be interviewed by you.
Oh, thanks.
That would
Well,
be
I think
great.
I'd take them out to eat like Ed does, and
I
be
know,
like,
right?
they better not be like, hey, to the waiter, or this.
Right, exactly. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, well, I was just build on one thing, because we've got a pitch next Friday and we're getting lunch afterwards with the clients. So it's a good, I think that'll be, interesting on both sides, because that's not a normal thing that I've experienced. Like maybe there's food brought in the meeting or something, but I really like it because it's a way to get to know each other better for all the reasons you said, Ed.
Are you going to order alcohol? Are you going to order anything like alcoholic or no? No. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no, maybe if it was a dinner, but if it's at lunchtime, no judgment if the client does that. I'll see how it goes. But
right.
I think we're all looking for red flags, whether it's hiring employees or choosing who to work with. Like you said, Ed, it's important what you say no to, and I think we've all learned we can be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing us, which is super important. But I haven't had a lot of interview experience because I spent so long at a few places. Like I worked for a year at Chiat early in my career, LA, and then had a really awkward interview moment where the CD said, "What do you like to do?" I said, "Cook." He says, I wouldn't say that." And I said, why? He thought I said I like to do coke.
Oh.
And I was like, nope. So I was like, shame on you. What's on your?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, right.
But and then I went to Chiat, went to Crispin for 7 years. So I had one interview for that, and then we started WIP 6.5 years ago. So I haven't interviewed, but I've interviewed a lot of people, obviously, to join. And I think the meal is that's a great, because it shows it's such a microcosm of so much behavior. But I really do look for, passion for advertising. Of course, I want them to love what they do. Honestly, not in an egotistical way, but passion for WIP. Like, why do you want to be at work in progress? Like, why are you interested? What drew you to it? Because I think that's a sign of intentionality. Like, you can tell when someone's kind of just applying everywhere versus they want to work for you. And then tied to what everybody else is saying, and the going to a restaurant, emotional intelligence. Like, I think the bar has gotten a lot higher for the better in advertising to have people that are emotionally intelligent. I think that there was a long time where it was cool to be an asshole and to kind of not care and be disrespectful, and it just doesn't fly anymore, and I think there's still places where that exists, of course, but people expect more from their employer, from their workplace. They want to be somewhere where there's a higher emotional intelligence, or that can be a competitive advantage. And so I put that on myself, but I also look for it for others, because that person might become a creative director one day, or they already are. We're interviewing for that role, and they're going to dictate a lot of people's lives and have interactions I never have with them. And we still kind of have people get interviewed by a lot of people, which I know can be annoying, but the way someone interacts with me can be very different than they interact with someone else that is a peer or someone that maybe they'll even be managing, how they treat them and what red flags other people pick up on is important. So, that's part of it too, not just how I interview, but that they're interviewed by a good number of other teams or people just to kind of feel them out and how they treat someone in account or how they treat someone in production or how they treat a junior copywriter. So
would it be advisable for a potential candidate to email or talk to an assistant, your assistant, or try to get some kind of understanding of what your process is prior to an interview?
I like someone that's proactive. I mean, there's plenty, whether they've listened to past interviews or articles that have been written, or you can glean a lot about the agency approach and methodology from us talking openly about certain work and stuff. So someone that's willing to do that in the same way that you said, it shows how they'll try to tackle a client. Will they be doing research? Will they be intentional? Will they be strategic?
Yeah.
Like, I want to see that applied because it can say so much about someone. And there's, with the exception of Ed and Gayle, apparently there's a lot of information out there about people to find. And so they can dig in and be intentional about that or ask good questions about that. So yeah, does everybody have to do that? No, but I think it just says they're intentional about things, they're strategic about things, they're smart about things. So that goes a long way, and maybe less common with juniors, but not necessarily. I've had a lot of junior creatives really be intentional. So
if they're hungry, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, intentionality and hunger.
Yeah, I love that. And Gayle, it's like with people that want to be on your juries. I mean, that must be, something that you have to deal with, people trying to get to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of us who recruit for juries, my colleagues who are recruiting for the advertising jury, we go through that. And but we do get a lot of over the transom, hey, I'm looking for a job, or hey, can you help me? I just graduated. And so I personally will take time if somebody reaches out to me. And to what Matt said, a lot of people are I just want a job, any job in the book, and then I'll usually zero in and say, well, you've got this, what would your dream job be? And then I'll give them some suggestions. I always feel like if you can't really help them, like, here's your job, give them something that helps them get to that next spot or that next person.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it.
That's the way people were with me when, I was starting out in my career.
I love that. Yeah, mentorship is really important, and being open and being able to communicate to young people coming into this industry, no matter what level or what part of the industry, I think is really important. One last one. So this one came out of I read this article about 5 years ago about how when you're a child, everybody's born creatively. Everybody can, kids, little boys dream of dragons and, all that kind of stuff, and little girls are ballerinas or whatever. And as you grow older, the peer pressure kind of starts to shape who you are personally. So you stop talking about, dragons, and you start doing football or baseball or sports, or little girls don't, do certain things. If they like sports, they're not doing that anymore. So, and then we grow up and we are who we are. So my question is because we want to fit in so badly, as we get older, what is the one thing that makes you stand out? Like whether or not it was something that you thought about when you were a kid and you stopped doing or you wanted to do, or now 30 years, 20 years, 5 years later, you're now doing it because you're like, oh my God, you know what? That's something I really was passionate about when I was a kid. What is that one thing that makes you as an individual stand out today? Matt, what about you?
Oh man, that's such a good
no
question.
Pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, when I was younger, at first glance, it was always just having red hair, right? Being teased. I know that's not the what you're looking for, but
everybody loves a ginger now.
Yeah. Not everybody. When you're younger, not everybody. But I think, and my hair's darkened since then, so maybe that's made it easier. But I think it's kind of goes hand in hand. And I heard a funny quote recently about being an old soul when you're younger, and what that really meant is just you were a really weird kid, but it was like a nice way of saying it. I think I think I was a weird kid, but it's kind of matured into, and I think the only word I can think of that is almost being nerdy about what I'm into. Like, I'm kind of nerdy about advertising. I'm okay with that. Like, I like being passionate about it and talking about it and being strategic about it. And like, I get really into, it's less advertising, more just helping clients and getting nerdy about their business and stuff. But I think there's a lot of shame put on you for being nerdy or really into something, whatever it is, and like trying hard and caring. And I think one thing that's been nice, I think about being in Boulder, is I haven't felt a need of like keeping up with the Joneses in an advertising sense.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I've been in and Boulder gets called a bubble for other reasons, but I feel like I've been able to be in a bit of a bubble where we can just focus on what we want to do here and not be caught up with what everybody else is doing and just try to make the right decisions. Just to say that I think now that it's, whether people call it your superpower or call it whatever, that like being kind of nerdy and hyper intentional about what I do was something that could have gotten beaten out of you and then to become something that's important later on, and being good with that. So I think that's kind of how I answer that question.
It's a great answer. And I have to tell you, like, just recently seeing the documentary on Lizzo and her now winning, she talks about how she goes, you know what, I am unapologetically a nerd. I'm a band nerd. And that's, and look at her. I mean, she's, ostensibly the most, amazing, phenomenal human being in terms of awareness that we have. So I think, I love that. Embrace what you are, and don't be afraid. And I think that's what we've kind of all been seeing in the past, like 10 years or 5 years, or certainly the past like couple of years during the pandemic, of embracing who we are and, and allowing other people to embrace who they are and support it. So I think it was a great question. And I agree. I think everybody wants a ginger friend. Yeah, I do. I need one. My ginger friend left me because I maybe have called him ginger too many times. So will you be my ginger friend?
Yeah. I think it's official now. Let's make it official.
Official. Good. I love it. What about you, Ed?
As far as standing out, my bastardized mumbling Kiwi accent kind of helps me like on a daily basis, especially when I'm in a room full of Americans. So I've got that. I've got that on my side. On a more serious note, but with a lot of levity, is just not taking things too seriously. I think our industry, like historically, has had its head a little bit up its own behind it at times, and I like, we need to do great things, and we've got the opportunity and sometimes the responsibility to help our clients turn their businesses around. But it doesn't mean to say that we have to take that responsibility too seriously all the time, and we can bring a little bit of levity to things to make the endless Zoom calls or the back-to-back meetings that much more bearable.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's, you said a mouthful, brother, because I think levity is just so important. We have to laugh at ourselves in situations. And if we don't, I don't know, give it up, like you're just not going to enjoy life, and nobody's going to enjoy you. So I think that's amazing. What about you, Gayle?
I think, like, if I boil it down, it's really a curiosity about people. Like, I love people. I love talking to people, hearing how'd you get here? Why'd you get here? What, that kind of thing. And I've always had jobs or positions or hobbies where I got to meet a lot of different people. And this job is perfect. In terms of juries and clients, I have them all over the world. And then the media outlets, I'll be like, how's your son? Did he graduate? Like, I just know everybody's business. I think I'm like a town crier in that respect, because I know a lot. And so there's that. And then as a kid, I always loved comedy, like way back, like the Lucille Ball and Laurel and Hardy, and just like, and then now I like love all the new young comedians that are coming out, and I just love it, love it, love it. And so, through my life, I did improv and, took writing classes and did all that. And some of my friends are like, and friends and ex-friends are pretty famous. But it's just, I just appreciate that sense of humor and being able to go out with someone like man, woman, or beast who can really make me laugh, where like my eyes are tearing and my sweater's all ruffled and I'm all out of control. Like I love that. So I think it would be those two, like quest for comedy, but really just loving to hear, like, I want to know Matt's story. I want to know Ed's story. I want to know you, Oliver. Addison, I've known for years, but I want to email him after this. What about, blah, blah. So yeah, that's that.
I love that. I really truly thought you were going to be like, oh, and I took up stand-up comedy, and I will be at the Chicago.
I did do a stand-up comedy thing, but I did a bunch of shows when I was younger in Chicago, and I was with a couple different improv groups, and we did benefits and all different types of things, had running shows, and I've done roasts. You know,
I think you should take it up again. I'm gonna push you to do that. I'm gonna dare you to take it up again. I got to tell you guys, time is very valuable. I so appreciate your time. LBB, Addison, myself, we love doing this and we love getting to know new people. And this has certainly been a great. You guys are inspiring, and you know, I just want to thank you again. Nice to meet all of you, Gayle, Ed, and Matt, for sure.